And I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. Molly Schumann? Okay. It's the same struggle with my students. And she is going to be talking about her paper, an exploration of Hermione Granger. Is she a feminist, a heroine, or a breaker of stereotypes?
Hi, guys. Since I'm extremely neurotic, I laminated all my index cards because there's 66 of them, because that's what you do. Okay, so this is kind of an expansion on a paper I had previously written for a gender and language course that I took a year ago. I'm a master's student. So I do believe that Hermione is in fact the brightest witch of her age, which is repeatedly demonstrated in her role within the Golden Trio, most notably because she is one of the only females in this male-dominated series. So I argue that she fits into all three categories of being a feminist, a heroine, and in fact a breaker of stereotypes. So if we are to examine Hermione as a multifaceted character, we have to break down each one of these sections in order to do them full justice. So let's look at her name before we do anything else as a means of understanding where she could possibly originate from. So if we look into Greek mythology, Hermione was the name of the daughter of Menelaus, king of Sparta, and you know, the face that launched 1,000 ships, aka Helen of Troy. This would suggest that she's kind of empowered. So another Hermione is a Hermione in the Bible. In the New Testament, she actually becomes martyred, thus resulting in Saint Hermione. Shakespeare also writes of a Hermione in The Winter's Tale, who is the Queen of Sicily. She's smart, beautiful woman who is convicted of adultery, naturally, under false pretenses, and ultimately dies of grief. She's brought back to life at the end of the play, though. So the Greeks were tenacious, which is seen in our Hermione Granger. As for Saint Hermione, our Hermione possesses the ability to be unwavering in her beliefs. The Shakespearean Hermione lends our Hermione the ability to take things in stride, resulting in usually a success. So the first point, let's define feminism. There's a lot of definitions. I'm only going to cover a few. Feminism is in fact a label forged from social circumstance. Some believe that feminism is in fact the empowerment of women. And if we do such a thing, women then become a threat. Does that appear to be true of Hermione? Is she a threat? I mean, I think so. The smarter she is, the more intelligence she acquires, the more of a danger and an asset she is to the wizarding world. So Hermione Granger is one of the first real feminists that our reader would encounter, whether the reader is male or female, young or old. So as the series progresses, she's able to claim her own feminist space, exempt from being the traditional sidekick status, as Andrade states in Hermione Granger Saves the World, Essays on Feminist Heroine of Hogwarts, which is in the other room on the book display. Plug. So to continue this argument that Hermione Granger is in fact a feminist, it's that she has the ability to construct and maintain a community. She engages in a brand of feminism which strives to include men instead of excluding them. By doing this, she in turn creates other feminists. Ron, Harry. She requires both females and males to move her ideals along. This advances her feminism and does not seclude her ideas. Patagonia said in 2011 that Emma Watson identified more with Hermione being a warrior and a fighter as opposed to the traditional idea of a young girl being a princess and fragile. Also in 2011, Reynolds said that in fact, it's unprecedented for a girl to not only be an equal to her male counterparts, but in some respects, she's actually stronger. She steers away from the sidekick status and sets herself in a role of necessity. It's through her personal strength that Hermione's pursuit of academia, which is applied both inside and outside of the classroom, she also displays her own agency, which defines her as a feminist as well. Miss Granger is a feminist role model because she understands the underpinnings of feminism, sexual equality, and remains true to herself, overcoming the external pressures from society and traditional expectations. I believe that Hermione should be accepted as a feminist role model for presenting and embodying the expressionism of feminism. Part of the reason that Hermione is so successful at being a feminist role model is because she is solid and powerful. She refuses to be shackled by the role of supporting character and establishes her own identity within the Potterverse. Feminists strive for the same things. They seek to be identified as their own within the vast expanse of the world. So one of the main ideas of feminism is equality. The Potterverse is characterized by a widespread gender equality that spans across multiple domains such as Quidditch, which employs both male and female players, education, the Ministry of Magic, evil, which encompasses both Voldemort and Bellatrix, and the fight against evil, also known as the Order of the Phoenix, which has both males and females. While there's not much gender inequality amongst wizarding kind, there is some present between wizarding kind and the other creatures that lie within the Potterverse, namely the house elves versus our masters. So one of the inequalities present in the wizarding kind is that of blood status. We could liken this to racism in and amongst humankind. We know that Hermione is born of Muggle parents, which some pure-blood families frown upon. She embraces her heritage, though, and she becomes successful in spite of it. This proves her feminist ideals are at work because she thrives in the worst conditions, just like feminism has. Hermione's feminist activism to end oppression and inequality are not so much directed at Muggle-born wizards and the like, but more towards house elf activism, which is one of the groups that occupies an unequal position in the Potterverse. It's through her personal goals that Hermione achieves what she has set out for herself, and often she converts people to a new understanding of gender equality. Another aspect that makes Hermione Granger a feminist, I think, is that she is in fact an activist, which ties in with the idea of equality. One element of feminism is finding a platform to stand on or to stand for. Hermione's is social activism, and that's kind of the majority of feminism. We see the shift in Hermione's desire to be free of the house elves' enslavement in Book 4, which was left out of the movies entirely, perhaps because this isn't a story about Hermione, but it's more Harry-centric. Upon seeing the way that Crouch treats Winky, which is in the books, at the Quidditch World Cup, Hermione darts into action. This normality of house elf enslavement by pureblood wizarding families seems to be what bothers her the most. Let us also note that Harry has seen the mistreatment of house elves firsthand and in turn freed Dobby from the Malfoys before Hermione ever created Spew. As an outraged activist, Hermione founded the Society for the Preservation of Elvish Welfare, which I'm going to call Spew, so just going to shorten that. She is one-sided in her beliefs of the house elves' predicament. To Hermione, it's pretty obvious that the house elves need her help to be set free. But what she fails to realize is that she's imposing on their own welfare, which is terrifying them. She postulates the idea of elves having the ability to use wands, which would put them to similar or equal power as wizards. House elves are indentured to perform the household tasks, which are often seen as women's work. This would suggest that Hermione is fighting for the equality of the oppressed minorities. Another goal of Spew is to get a house elf into the ministry to correctly represent them. Political representation is a major feminist point. One of the last points of the Spew campaign is the idea of decent wages and good working circumstances, which is also a very valid point in the world of feminism, especially in a male-driven workforce. By her activism, she shuns the elves more than helps them. She imposes giving them clothes, all hidden around the Gryffindor common room, so that they may secretly be set free, which even further horrifies them. Since Dobby is a free elf and employed at Hogwarts, he's the only one that would clean Gryffindor house because he's not terrified because he's already free. These house elves do not wish to be free. By doing this, Hermione is denying them of their own agency. Rachel McCarthy James argued in 2001 that by engaging in Spew, Hermione participates in the grand feminist tradition of devaluing disregarding and silencing oppressed classes while centering herself and her opinions on their marginalization. But the idea of Spew strives for general respect is also relatable to the ultimate feminist goal. The main downfall of converting people to her cause is that as a teenager, she doesn't question the elves about their feelings before she enlists the help of other wizarding kind. When she finally does speak to the elves, she realizes the grave problem of trying to free them when they in fact do not wish to be freed. I believe that her inability to communicate with the party she's trying to free is some of her worst actions throughout the series, which is perhaps why it was scrapped from the movie plot entirely, or that it was too time-consuming for a Harry-centric story. Either viewpoint could be taken. I personally don't think that her intentions were to be malicious, but merely the intentions of a misguided teenager who's trying to start a movement with no jumping off point, which also has happened in feminism, which is why it has come in waves over the years. So if we shift briefly, we can look at the idea of Hermione as an integral part of the Golden Trio. It's the Golden Trio as a whole that I believe is the actual protagonist of this series. Each member of this trio is essential in order to succeed. That is to say that throughout the series, the trio functions as a sole entity. Hermione's role within this trio is to function as the brain. She's the logical one, who solves the puzzles, spots clues, and provides insights or answers to the questions that are presented. If we remove one member of the trio, the other two are unable to properly function. Ron brilliantly illustrates this point by saying he and Harry wouldn't last 2 days without Hermione. This proves that she is in fact an essential member of the trio, because no one in this series succeeds alone. So since I've mentioned the trio, I will now discuss Hermione being a heroine. So in Deathly Hallows Part 1, she embodies the ideal hero epic journey in the film and throughout the book. A little background to what the mythical hero or heroine epic is that the journey starts with the hero or heroine breaking all formal ties in order to leave and start on their journey. We see Hermione doing this because she modifies the memory of her parents in order to join the boys on a quest to hunt for Horcruxes. As soon as she does this, she's free to set out on her journey with the rest of the trio. On more than one occasion, Hermione saves the lives of those around her. This shows that she's true to her principles. Not only is she serious about saving her own life, but she seeks to ensure the safety of those around her. It's her agency that helps her make these executive decisions throughout the series that repeatedly solidify her spot between Harry and Ron on their ultimate quest to defeat evil. Hermione challenges the status quo. She doesn't back down when she's faced with a challenge, and she's always right in taking a stand. Hermione's chosen to be in Gryffindor because she's brave at heart. She also possesses other Gryffindor qualities, such as nerve and chivalry. Also, when Hermione saves the day, she doesn't seek praise for her efforts. She remains humble. Isn't that something you'd want in a heroine? Finally, I want to argue that she does in fact break stereotypes. While she's been characterized as a stereotypical girl through the first few books of the series, we see a growth in her character as the years go on. She's labeled as being emotional or sensitive to the point of irrationality as an 11-year-old. She's 11. I don't know any 11-year-old female that wouldn't be emotional about a confrontation with a troll. I mean, it's crazy. Another point of proving that Hermione breaks stereotypes is at the Yule Ball. She seemingly conforms to traditional feminine roles by wearing the dress and doing her hair, because she's altered her appearance, but she redeems herself by saying, it's just too much work for every day, so you just have to deal with me. This proves that she's not ascribing to everyday expectations of feminine beauty, but only on special occasions instead of being consumed by the desire to alter her appearance to impress those around her. Hermione is the Sherlock to Harry's Watson. She really is. She's the voice of reason, the voice of logic, and the voice of social justice. She's the contemporary teenage witch who informs, interacts with, and undercuts the archetypal and mythological and the social dimensions throughout the series. Hermione is in fact much less bound by either character or stereotype than any other person in the series, even Harry. The flexibility that Rowling imparts on her character further enables Hermione to step outside the stereotypical lines and act according to her own understanding of the events. Hermione breaks her own stereotype of being a strict rule follower as the years go on. She's willing to break the rules in order to achieve a greater good. This is evident on many occasions, most notably when she's risking expulsion to attain information or to save the school. Or when she's seen in engaging in illicit curses against her own fellow Gryffindors. You know, Neville, really? You just had to petrify him? Sure, why not? Hermione's the one who devises the plan to use Polyjuice Potion on the trio's quest to discover the Chamber of Secrets. The boys show a particular reluctance to engaging in the making of this potion, which spurs Hermione to shame them, ensuring their help. So, blackmail. This identifies Hermione as a rule breaker. She goes behind the back of Umbridge, and by proxy, the Ministry of Magic, in the Order of the Phoenix to create Dumbledore's army for the sake of being taught useful things as opposed to what was Ministry approved. Hermione also is able to use her intellect and her abilities to create a method of communication between the members of Dumbledore's army by enchanting the coins that are given out. Also left out of the movies. Hermione further proves her worth as a rule breaker, once again, in Order of the Phoenix, when a few of the army members are in the Ministry of Magic. During this firefight, one of the Death Eaters gets cursed and finds himself with a baby head as opposed to his usual one. Also left out of the movies. The body of a man with the head and the intellect of a baby, if you will. Harry insists on cursing him for his crimes against them. But alas, Hermione comes in and proves herself as the voice of reason. She makes the argument that the Death Eater is unaware of what he's done, so therefore he should not be further punished. This act of generosity could be taken as Hermione breaking the rules of combat in the wizarding world. Hermione's the witch that makes it all possible. She's the voice of reason within the wizarding community. She's the character that contemporizes and undercuts its traditional components. As both character and part stereotype, as both nerd and teenager, Hermione is the character that moves the series out of those conventions of typical young adult male-centered literature. Thanks.